Hello, everyone. Welcome to the APH Virtual Excel Academy. Today, we are talking about recipes and Ooblek. We are so happy to have you join us today. Feel free to drop in the chat who you are and where you are from. We are glad to have you with us. Now, we know today is more structured for students who might have an assistant with them helping them out. And if you are an assistant, it's okay if you can't respond in the chat because you are busy helping. We get that. But if you are someone who wants to write to us in the chat, you are welcome to do so. Again, welcome to the APH Virtual Excel Academy. Today is recipes and Ooblek. Welcome, welcome. There is a chat, but we are also going to feature a schedule and the recipe that we are building. So be ready to join us. We did send out the materials if you want to make it with us. So I am going to now turn it over to Jessica Chamblin. Jessica, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing really well today. I'm very excited to be here. I will just introduce myself. I go by Miss Jess. If you use sign language, this is my name sign. I'm taking my pinky and I'm circling it off my chin. That's how you say Miss Jess in sign language. I have bright orange hair, white skin, and I'm wearing blue glasses today. My shirt is orange again. If you were here the last time I was here, I also had an orange sweater. This one is a little more muted in my opinion. It reminds me of the taste of carrots or sweet potatoes, or even the smells of those foods, something kind of earthy and a root vegetable. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pull up a visual schedule on the screen here. I can find it. It disappeared on me. There we go. So for our session today, the first thing that we're always going to do when we do a Zoom call is log in. We've already done that. To get started, I really like to do stretches. For me, I have a rubber band, and I use that to tactily let me know that I am going to be stretching my body next. After we do our stretches, we're going to do our activity. Again, for our activity, I have a tactile symbol. I have a piece of wood that I use because I usually do my activities on a table. When we're done with the first part of our activity, we can take a break. I'm going to play some music. It'll be a short 5 to 7 minute break just to get situated, calm down, get our materials in order so that we can then actually make our recipe. My tactile symbol for that is a little pom-pom cush ball. You could use a cotton ball. If you take a break on a mat, you might use a piece of mat to let you know, all right, next thing I'm doing is going to be a break. When we are back from our break, we will again finish our activity. I'm going to stick with my piece of wood as my symbol to let me know the next thing I'm doing is a table activity. After that, we will stretch again. I use my rubber band to let me know that's what's coming next. And then we'll be all done for our activity today. So on my schedule, I am going to go ahead and take off log in because I already did that. Next, we're going to do our stretches. So if you want to get your rubber band ready and just give that a couple pulls so we know stretches. I like to do 3 stretches. 1, 2, 3. The first stretch are my arms straight out in front of me as far as I'm comfortable to go. That might be a little bit, and that's okay. Someone might help you by pulling your arms forward. So I would say hands under your hands and then gently pull them forward for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice. Our second stretch, I put my arms as high above me as I'm comfortable. You might just want to put them up a little bit. that is fine. You might just set them on the table, and that's fine too. Whatever is comfortable for you. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And our last stretch, that is our third stretch. I like to wrap my arms tight around myself in a hug. Maybe you just want to cross your arms. Again, it's whatever's comfortable for you. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have stretched. I now know that I am ready to focus on my next activity. And I'm going to be doing my table activity. So I'm going to take my symbol for work time. There, I know. I am going to do some work. Let's look at our visual schedule real quick. And we will take stretching off of our schedule because it's finished. And we'll move on to our activity. So I'm going to hop over to my workspace. The first thing that I would like to do in my workspace is look at how I might do a first then for a recipe. So for our recipe, and we'll go over this in detail later, the first thing that I'm going to do is get a bowl. So the first thing I'm going to need is a bowl. I like to set up, you can use a tray or you can even just use a piece of paper with whatever kind of divider you would like. I use pipe cleaners. But the first thing is going to be the bowl. So I want to put that in my first box. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to measure a certain amount of cornstarch. And that concept might be a little challenging to think about, but we can still present exactly what we're doing with our objects. So the first thing I will need is a bowl. And the next thing I'm going to do is measure my cornstarch. So when you are actually working through your activity with me, working through this recipe, I'll be showing this on the screen as well, and you can copy me. But for anticipation for everyone, this is what we're going to be doing. So right now, you might want to feel what objects we're going to be using. Because this that I'm holding right now is a bowl. And we use bowls for lots of things. Sometimes we use them for eating. So we might put cereal or fruit or snacks in a bowl, and then we eat out of the bowl. Or we might put things into a bowl and mix. If you've ever helped with recipes at home, you know, sometimes we dump a bunch of things into a bowl and then mix them around. The next things that we have are our measuring cups. And the cups that you'll need today are 1 cup and 1/2 cup. I like to make sure that mine are as visual as possible. So I color the bottom of my 1 cup a solid color. And I show that I have half in my 1/2 cup. If you feel these, you can tell that there's a difference between the 2 cups. One of them is much bigger than the other. The next thing we're going to be using is cornstarch. I'm going to go ahead and open it so that I can really explore what it is I'm going to be touching before I touch it. So if you can help open the cornstarch, if yours isn't open yet, I think that's a good idea. I had to pull a cardboard tab up and then off of my box. Then I take each edge of the cardboard tabs and I fold them over and down. Inside, I have another set of cardboard tabs that I'm gonna fold over and down. If I feel inside my box, there's something else in there. I don't think this is the cornstarch yet. When I pinch it, it crinkles. And I can feel that it has been sealed shut at the top. There are horizontal lines in the paper. I know that I need to open bags that are inside boxes because I've done this a lot. I've opened cereal bags. I've opened other types of food or other products that come in bags. So I already know that I need to open this. Some people use scissors, but I'm going to use my hands and pinch on either side of the bag and pull. It might be that someone else opens the bag for you, but you can feel that they're tearing it open. Perhaps your hands will be on top of theirs while they open the bag. Now, I can see that there's something inside this bag. If I pick up my box, it's heavy. I know there's something in there. And if you feel comfortable, you can take out some of the cornstarch that's inside the bag and touch it. Cornstarch is really soft. And when you put your fingers on it and all your fingers are covered and you rub them together, you can hear a soft squeaking sound. I don't really like that sound. I also don't really like the texture of cornstarch on my hands because it's so smooth and slippery. Do you like the feel of cornstarch or not? You can put a yes, a Y, or an N, no, in the chat if you'd like to. I would say, no, I don't really like it, but I know some people do because they can rub their hands together really fast with the cornstarch on their hands. This recipe is going to be a little bit messy. So I apologize in advance, but I think messy is fun. So while you are exploring your cornstarch, I'm going to continue to discuss what we will do with our calendar system here. And if you'd rather use the picture symbols, you certainly can. But once we have measured our cornstarch, the next thing we're going to do is put it in the bowl. So what makes sense to me on a tactile schedule like this, or an object schedule, is to have the bowl next, because we will have measured and we will put it in the bowl. I have my water as well, because that is the next step. After we put our cornstarch in the bowl, we're gonna measure 1 cup of water. My water here is clear, and I don't really like clear water. So I have picked the color orange today, but if you have food coloring and you wanna get your water ready, you could do that right now. Oh, Alexis, you don't like the cornstarch either. I'm glad that we are in the same boat. I'm gonna add some drops of color to my water. And when I do this, the color in the water spreads out very slowly. It's kind of like on a drum. If you've ever played with a drum and you've hit your hand in the middle and you felt it reverberate out, that's a little bit like what the water is doing, or what the food coloring is doing in the water right now. I'm going to use another pipe cleaner to stir it together, and I am stirring in circles. think I'll add a little bit more color because I want mine to be really bright. But you do not need to add color for this recipe. That is a choice that you have. And if you enjoy making choices, I am sure that someone can offer you maybe more than one color to choose from. And you can decide yourself, what color do you want to use in your recipe today? Again, once we've measured our water, the next thing that we're going to do is pour it in a bowl. So I would again have my bowl ready in this first box. And then we can pour our water into the bowl. Our last step is going to be to mix it. And I like to use my hands to mix my oobleck. If you are not comfortable using your hands because you do not like the texture, that means that you should probably get a spoon ready. And I did not ask you to get a spoon yet. If you do, this is where you would put the spoon because that would be our next step in our activity. After that, we are done with our recipe and we can simply play. So at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and have us take our break. That way we can gather any materials that we haven't already gathered, and you can get set up with your first set of instructions. So I will go ahead and put that here for you again. It's first to get our bowl, and then to measure our cornstarch. So this is what your setup should look like if you're using a tactile schedule. If you are using a visual schedule, it will be number 1 and number 2. I'm gonna go ahead and play some music, and when we're at about 5 minutes, I will be leading some stretches just to get us back into work mode. So at this time, you can go ahead and have about a 7-minute break. I'm gonna go ahead and start our 3 stretches that we did at the beginning just to get settled back in so that we are ready to do our activity and finish our recipe. I have my rubber band here to let me know it's time to do our stretches. Arms straight out in front of you. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Arms straight above you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Last stretch. Arms wrapped around yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. We should be getting our final bits of settling in done. We're all done with our break. And we will move on to our table activity. And I forgot to share our schedule before, so I apologize. I will pull it up right now though. So we finished our first part of the activity, so that'll come off of our schedule. We finished our break. So now we are ready for the second part of our activity. I will again move to my workspace. All right. So let's make this Ooblek recipe. When I look at what my recipe says to do, the first thing, and I can feel that my first thing is this bowl. So I'm going to get my bowl ready. My second thing to do is to measure 1 of these, 1 cup, and 1 of these, a half cup of cornstarch. So let's do that now. I'm gonna tip my cornstarch, oh, that's messy, into my cup. I'm gonna use a spoon instead. Sometimes we change our plans on the fly. Pouring it was not successful. I felt like that was going to be too messy. So I'm going to accept a change in the original plan and use a spoon to fill up my 1 cup. The way I know that my cup is full is if I run my hand over the top, I can feel that there's cornstarch in there. So I've completed filling my 1 cup. Now I'm going to fill my half cup. I'm going to use my spoon to scoop it in. So I've done 1 scoop, and if I feel in the measuring cup, I know it's not full yet. So I'll do another scoop. That's 2 scoops. And if I feel it's not full yet, so I'll try a 3rd scoop. And I'm gonna use my spoon to pat it down, but gently or it goes everywhere. Now it feels like that is enough. So my next step is to pour it in the bowl. And you might have poured it in the bowl while you were measuring. That's what experienced cooks do as you go along. It makes sense to just dump it in because we already know that's the next step. So right now, go ahead and pour it into your bowl. I'm holding it in my dominant hand, which is my right hand, And I'm going to turn it toward my body and feel to make sure that I'm inside the bowl. And dump. I can feel that the cup is empty. I can see the black mark on the bottom, so I know that my cup is empty and I have done it. I'm gonna do the same thing for my other cup and turn it towards myself and feel that I am inside the bowl and dump. And I can again see that there's nothing on the bottom, and I can feel that there's nothing on the bottom. So our next two steps to prepare are our water and pouring it in the bowl. So I will put my bowl here and my water here. And I need 1 cup of water. So I will reuse my same cup and set it up so that I know which measuring cup I'm supposed to use. So my first step is to measure my water. So I'm going to scoop my water. And if you need to do a little bit more in your cup, that's fine. If you'd rather use 2 half cups, you can do that as well. Just make sure that that is clear with what you're doing. So I've scooped my water and now I need to pour it into my bowl. And I'll get a little bit more water because my cup wasn't full. We have finished measuring, so that can go away. We have poured it into the bowl, and our next step is to mix, and we can either mix with our hands or mix with a spoon. I'm going to start with a spoon and move on to my hands. Because what you'll notice is it's really hard to stir this. When I have my spoon in here, it feels like I'm stirring something solid, something hard, something that doesn't give. It's not like stirring water or stirring a liquid or juice. It's really strange. Ooblek is a strange texture. So now I'm gonna move on to my hands. And I would suggest to be very respectful about touching the ooblek. So it might be better if an adult touches it first so that then you can tell that it's safe to touch. Do you like this? It is not edible, do not eat it, but it isn't toxic unless you're allergic to corn. Do you like the way this feels? Yes or no? You probably can't hit the chat because your hands are likely covered in ooblek. If yours is too watery, you can always add a little more cornstarch. It's really difficult to mess this one up. I'm gonna add a little bit more to mine. And I'm just shaking some of the white cornstarch into the ooblek. This is kind of a fun sensory toy if you like the feel of it, because it feels very cool on my fingers, cool temperature-wise, and cool as far as it's neat, it's different. I haven't ever felt something like ooblek before. It feels like a liquid, like water, and a solid all at the same time. If you are a person who is learning Braille or learning some tactile sensitivity where you're trying to find objects within objects, it might be fun to hide beads or other hard non-porous things in your Ooblek to try and find and see if you can feel them inside. What happens when you hit the Ooblek really hard? When I hit it, it gets really stiff. But then if I set my fingers in it slowly, my hands go right to the bottom. It's like if I press hard, the Ooblek gets hard. But if I press soft, the Ooblek gets soft. You can experiment with adding more water and more cornstarch. What happens if you add more cornstarch? What happens if you add more water? When I add more cornstarch, it gets more stiff. It doesn't give way as easily. Where it was kind of pouring off of my fingers before, it comes off in chunks now. What I'm gonna do now is give you a couple minutes to decide whether you'd like to go ahead and clean up your hands for now so we can finish our session, do our stretches, and say goodbye. I'm going to go wipe my hands off, so I will be back in a minute. Or if you want to keep playing with this, because if you're interested in this, if this is really interesting to you, keep going with it, keep exploring it. It's nice to individually explore it without having me just talk over all of your processing. So I will be back in less than a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and do our stretches. Nice. I am back. My hands are clean. I just went to the sink and washed them with water, and that was it. The cornstarch comes right off. Same thing, if it gets anywhere on your floor and your carpets, just add some water, let it dry, and then vacuum it up, and it should come right up. There should be no issues there. We are all done. I use an X, and I usually have some hot glue on it. The tape is so that it's visual, you could see it. And we have finished that activity. So I'm gonna take it off of my schedule. And the last thing that we're going to do are our final stretches. If you are not ready to do stretches because you are still enjoying playing with your Ooblek, that is perfectly fine. Should keep doing that. If whoever's with you would like to go ahead and lead stretches at the end just to give a definite close to the activity, that might be a good idea, but that's up to you. So now, I have my rubber band. I know I'm gonna do my stretches. I'm gonna put my arms straight out in front of me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm gonna put my arms straight above me and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Last stretch. I like to wrap my arms around myself. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. We are all done with our stretches, so we can go ahead and take that off of our schedule. And there is not anything else that I'm going to ask you to do except to say thank you. I really appreciate that you did this with me today. Sometimes this is scary. This is a whole lot of new stuff, new feels, new textures, and you might never have experienced it before. And it can be scary to put your hands in something that you are not familiar with. And I understand that. So thank you for whatever part of this you participated in. I appreciate it. And you can use this kind of first, then two-part template for really anything. If you're making recipes at home or even just pouring cereal into a bowl, that might be a good way to introduce this and keep this going in your routine. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. Now I'm going to have to take some time and make Ooblek at home, and I'm sure my kids will enjoy it too. For anyone who's listening and wants to know what's coming up next week, we have 3 different sessions, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday is the most magnificent thing, and we're going to talk about self-determination and developing a growth mindset. But that's for students in elementary school, and you guys might really enjoy that. On Wednesday, we're talking about communicating about a visual impairment and handling those not so fun, uncomfortable situations. And that's really aimed at students in middle and high school. And then Thursday, get ready, we are going to talk about understanding my breath. And that is for all of you, definitely. Those have materials just like this one did, so make sure you read the emails or visit the webpage so that you know what to have. Thank you again, Jessica. This was fabulous.